More rumblings, this time from Villa Park. Ron Atkinson had clinched a runners-up spot in the league and a League Cup triumph, but Villa had made a poor start to the season, and the pressure, particularly from the chairman Doug Ellis, was growing.
I'm getting impatient. I'd be dishonest if I didn't say. I want something done, and the manager knows it.
Atkinson believed he was close to turning the corner, but it was a major shock that just days after Ellis said Atkinson was one of the top 3 managers in the country, that he was axed. Big Ron, as he's fondly known, was out of football for 3 months before in February he returned to take over at Coventry City. Atkinson became City's 7th manager inside the last 9 years. Departing Highfield Road by mutual consent was Phil Neal. Under his charge, Coventry won just 7 league games all season and were looking strong candidates for relegation. The merry-go-round continued with the saga of Brian Little. He'd led Leicester into the Premier League this season via the playoffs, but they found life among the elite tough. They were clear favourites to make a quick return to Division 1. And when Ron Atkinson parted company with Aston Villa, rumours circulated that Little, a former Villa favourite as a player, would now step into the hot seat.
For 3 years I've been at the football club, I have maintained at all times that job satisfaction is very important to me. If that isn't 100% right, then I'm going to have a problem. This moment in time, that certainly isn't 100% right, and I think it's in the best interest of the football club that this particular course of action is taken.
Leicester fans were scathing of Little, who they believed had deserted the club to leave for Villa and didn't really have the courage to admit it. He was given a rough ride when he returned to Filbert Street as new manager of Aston Villa just a couple of weeks after departing. The man to replace him at Leicester was Mark McGee. He arrived from First Division promotion hopefuls Reading, and it was a tough baptism, a relegation scrap in the Premier League. Another early season casualty was Mike Walker. Everton hoped that Walker's success at Norwich could be translated into trophies at a bigger club, but they lost 8 of their first 12 league games, one of the worst starts in the club's history, and he paid the price for a terrible sequence. Ironically, he was sacked just days after Everton managed their first win of the season over West Ham, and the timing of his dismissal left him bemused. Joe Royle was instantly linked with the vacancy, and it was not a surprise when 2 days later he took command. A playing favourite at Goodison in the late 60s and early 70s, he'd been close to joining Everton several times before. There were other changes. Billy Bonds resigned from West Ham even before a ball was kicked. Bonds had a lifetime association with the Hammers, and he was replaced by his assistant, Harry Redknapp. It would prove a difficult season for Redknapp. Also joining a struggling club was George Burley. He took over at Ipswich following the departure of John Lyle and Mick McGiven. And still in East Anglia, Norwich City's slide towards relegation cost John Dean his job. The man to step in for the last few weeks of the season was the popular Gary Megson. It was an incredible season for managers, but more and very different revelations were about to cause a major storm. It proved an unexpectedly busy year at the usually sedate headquarters of the Football Association. The English game was stunned by newspaper allegations of match rigging against Bruce Grobbelaar. It was alleged that one of the game's most colourful characters received large sums of money from a gambling syndicate to influence the outcome of Premier League games while still a Liverpool player. Fans at his new club, Southampton, showed their support for Bruce as he ran out for his first appearance after the scandal had broken. Grobbelaar, a very strong character, was determined not to let the allegations affect his game. And throughout the season, he has completely denied all the accusations of an affair which goes to the heart of football itself. FA and police inquiries followed, and late in the season, Grobbelaar was arrested. Also detained for questioning were John Fashanu and Wimbledon's goalkeeper Hans Segers. All were released on bail pending further inquiries. A particularly traumatic season for Grobbelaar. He hopes to know the outcome during the summer, but still remains ever popular with fans. Eric Cantona's footballing genius is sadly matched by a suspect temperament, and it exploded in sensational fashion on the 25th of January at Selhurst Park. There was no excuse for this assault on a Crystal Palace supporter after Cantona had been sent off. He was immediately suspended until the end of the season by Manchester United, and the FA subsequently imposed further punishment.
The members of the Commission have decided that Eric Cantona should be suspended forthwith from all football activities up to and including the 30th of September 1995.
Cantona's action led to a charge of common assault brought by the police. When he appeared in court, he was found guilty and sentenced to 2 weeks in prison. An appeal followed. This was then reduced to community service. At a press conference, his response showed the complexity of his character.
When the seagulls follow the trawler, it's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
So United were without Cantona for the rest of the season and beyond. How would it affect their chances of success? Paul Merson of Arsenal was much in the spotlight after he became the first Premier League player to admit an addiction to drugs and gambling. Although not condoning his actions, the FA and Arsenal sent him on a rehabilitation course. It proved successful, and an emotional Merson was welcomed back into the fold. It wasn't long before he was back in goal-scoring form for Arsenal too. His recovery looks complete. Another player surrounded in drugs controversy was Chris Armstrong of Crystal Palace. He was banned for 6 games after testing positive for a banned substance. George Graham of Arsenal was a big-name manager to be surrounded in controversy. It was alleged that he benefited personally to the tune of around £300,000 from the transfers of Pal Lyderson and John Jensen. When the news broke, Graham denied the allegations.
I have not profited from any of Arsenal's transactions in the transfer market, and I don't want to comment any more on that. But I think that says everything. If people just listen to that statement, it says everything. I've not profited in any way.
After appearing to support their man, the Arsenal board then sacked Graham in early March. He continues to plead his innocence and is determined to clear his name. Stuart Houston, Graham's loyal assistant, was the man charged with guiding the Gunners through the rest of the season.
Following that win over Newcastle, Manchester United were back in the groove. Waiting for them now, though, the old enemy from across the city. Enter Andrei Kanchelskis.
Now then, Cantona again, a bit of magic from him perhaps. Oh, it's a lovely layoff, Kanchelskis. Number 2. Manchester City haven't won here for over 20 years, and they're in trouble again as Kanchelskis goes forward and could make it 3. And has. Cantona has a look to see if the cavalry's arriving, and it is. And who else is Kanchelskis? That's the hat-trick.
United's enigmatic Ukrainian star had inspired a 5-0 thrashing, and he was soon to make his mark again as the champions disposed of Crystal Palace. United winners at Old Trafford by 2-0. With Newcastle losing that same day to Wimbledon, United led the Premier for the first time this season. Blackburn's win over Ipswich put them in 2nd place. Rovers, SAS, Sutton and Shearer were the talk of the country. Their goals highlighting Rovers' determined challenge for a First League Championship since 1914. Anything Sutton would do, Shearer was sure to follow. This one from the England striker secured a 3-0 win over Wimbledon at Selhurst Park, and Blackburn were now on top of the pile. Newcastle had been losing ground of late, and hopes of reviving their prospects faded further at White Hart Lane.
Anderton. That's a lovely ball, slide rule through the centre for Teddy Sheringham. 1-0 to Tottenham. Sheringham! The lead is restored. Sheringham. Teddy Sheringham has a hat-trick.
Within a week, Chairman Alan Sugar's appeal had also led to the restoration of the 6 points that Spurs had previously deducted. The talk of White Hart Lane now was not of relegation, but of a challenge for Europe.